Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We start today's video with a story that proves sometimes the smallest acts of laziness can have the biggest emotional impact. A gift meant to cheer someone up never makes it past the lobby, thanks to a delivery driver who didn't feel like climbing stairs. What follows isn't a confrontation, but a quiet setup that ensures the next attempt is far more exhausting than the first. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like and subscribe with a turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. He wouldn't climb 2 flights for my package, now he gets to climb 8 for it. I was supposed to get a delivery today from DHL, requires a signature. It was a gift for my wife, a new clothing item she'd been wanting for a while. Tracking told us today, this morning, updated to say between 1 and 3 p.m. Perfect. We work out together and my wife heads to work. I'm off today and home. I jump in the shower around 12:30 only to hear the doorbell at 12:40. Crap, he's early. I run to the doorbell and buzz him in, throw on a bathrobe soaking wet, and wait by the door. I just have to sign and then I can go finish my shower and stick the bathrobe in the dryer. Except no one knocks on my door. I stand there waiting for about 10 minutes. Maybe he has other deliveries in the building. Maybe he can't find my unit. No big deal until my phone goes off with another text update. Couldn't deliver package because you weren't home. I lit up. Run downstairs in flip-flops and a bathrobe. Truck already gone. Call the call center. Fortunately, get to speak to a human immediately, and he's very helpful. He says he's going to try to have them redeliver it because that's bullcrap. But if they can't, he gave me a list of options. I decide to wait to see if they can redeliver. This is the core violation of the service contract. He didn't fail to deliver, he actively falsified the record. The lie, you weren't home while you were waiting, wet and expectant, transforms a minor inconvenience into a personal act of disrespect. Long story short, and several hours later, they can't. No one knows why this dude didn't come upstairs. He made it into the building, and mine was the only package. But I know why. The elevator is down right now, so this dude walks into the lobby, sees the crew working on the disabled elevator, and decides the 2 flights of stairs from the lobby to the 3rd floor is just too much for him, turns around and walks out. And now he's not coming back. My wife is really sad. She's been having a rough time lately, and she was really looking forward to feeling pretty. So now I'm even angrier. The stakes just changed. This is no longer about a delayed package. It's about his laziness directly intercepting a small, meaningful gesture of care. Her sadness is the emotional tax for his dishonesty, and that makes it personal. The petty revenge. One option for redelivery is to come back the next day and leave it with a neighbor. So I texted around and found someone who could be home all day tomorrow to take the package on the 8th floor. Management sent out another email this morning that we shouldn't expect the elevator to be fixed until next week. Enjoy the stairs, a-hole. Well played, OP. You used the system's own flexibility to engineer a direct consequence. He avoided 2 flights, so you arranged for him to face 8. The rule book wasn't a barrier, it was the tool. He'll climb knowing someone outthought his laziness. Edit to add context, I live in an apartment building in a major city. Apartment buildings are the norms, and probably only half of the buildings have elevators. If you can't come up for whatever reason, say so at the intercom. I'll be right down with a bottle of water, too. The bait and switch? Not cool. And our next story. I sued and won half a year's salary. During my gap year between studies, I decided to get a full-time job so I wouldn't just sit around burning savings and pretending I was finding myself. I ended up working for a small local company I'll call Company N. It was run by a husband and wife, Dave and Karen, along with their adult son, who floated around doing odds and ends. From the outside, it looked like one of those cozy, wholesome small businesses that love to brag about how they were not corporate and treated employees like family. At first, that actually seemed true. The team was small, everyone knew each other, and Dave in particular liked to play the laid-back, approachable boss. He joked around, asked about your weekend, and made a big show of thanking people for helping the company grow. Karen handled most of the administration, schedules, emails, payroll, and while she was more formal and a bit colder, I didn't think much of it. Every workplace has that person. For the first 2 months, everything went smoothly. I showed up on time, did my work, helped out wherever I could, and got along with my coworkers. No write-ups, no warnings, no complaints. I was exactly the kind of employee small businesses claim they want: reliable, quiet, and willing to pull my weight without causing drama. Then I made my first mistake. About a month in advance, I realized that Slayer, yes, that Slayer, were playing what was going to be their last concert in my country. I'd grown up listening to them, and this was one of those once-in-a-lifetime things. I checked the schedule, saw that I was supposed to work that day, and figured I'd do the responsible thing. I sent an email. It wasn't rude, it wasn't demanding. It was straightforward and polite. I explained that I wanted to request a specific day off, mentioned the date clearly, and even explained why. Not because I thought I was entitled to it, but because I figured transparency couldn't hurt. I sent it with plenty of notice, assuming this would be a normal adult interaction. Karen replied, and her response was strange. She wrote back saying that this is not how asking for a day off works. No explanation, no guidance, just that sentence, dripping with judgment. I stared at the email, reread my own message, and genuinely wondered what I'd done wrong. Had I broken some unwritten rule, missed a form, used the wrong tone? Trying to be cooperative, I assumed she wanted something more formal, so I rewrote the email, more structured, more polite, borderline corporate, explicitly requesting the day off rather than explaining it. I sent it, feeling slightly ridiculous, but hopeful. Her reply made even less sense. She told me I should really think through what I was doing. That was it. No yes, no explanation, just a vague, ominous warning that sounded less like workplace communication and more like a disappointed parent. This is the first sign of a toxic family dynamic, rules that exist only as a vibe. Her refusal to give a clear no wasn't oversight, it was a power test. She wanted you to plead, justify, and internalize that your request was an imposition, not a right. At this point, I was confused, but still optimistic. I hadn't been told no. Maybe she was just being weird. Maybe Dave would clear it up. I figured I'd ask in person at my next shift and get it sorted like adults. The next workday came. I showed up as usual, locked my bike, and walked inside ready to start my shift. I didn't even make it halfway through the building before I spotted Dave. I was about to open my mouth and ask him about the emails when he beat me to it. "Do you still want to go to that concert?" he asked. I was caught off guard by how direct it was. No context, no lead-in, just that question. So I answered honestly, yes. He didn't hesitate. He didn't argue. He didn't even sigh. "Okay," he said, "take off your vest and you can go home." It took a few seconds for those words to register. I stood there completely stunned while my coworkers continued prepping for opening like nothing unusual was happening. My brain was scrambling to process what I'd just heard. Was I being sent home for the day? Was this some kind of joke, a power move? Then it hit me. I was being fired on the spot for asking for a day off. Anger washed over me, sharp and immediate. But I didn't say anything. I'm not confrontational by nature, especially when I'm blindsided like that. I took off my vest, handed it to Dave without a word, turned around and walked out. I got on my bike and rode home, replaying the conversation over and over in my head, trying to understand how things had escalated so quickly. The speed of the firing was the tell. A legitimate termination as process. A personal peak is instant. Dave's quiet, immediate action revealed this was never about policy. It was a punishment for not correctly performing subservience after Karen's vague warnings. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had worn off and the anger had settled into something colder and more focused. I walked in the door, dropped my bag, and just stood there for a moment trying to process what had happened. Fired, on the spot. No warning, no discussion, no paperwork, just take off your vest and go home. I told my mother everything almost immediately. The emails, the weird responses, Dave's question, the instant dismissal. She was quiet while I talked, which I knew meant she was already mentally lining things up and deciding whether this smelled wrong or illegal. Her first reaction wasn't outrage, it was confusion. "Did they give you anything in writing?" she asked. "No." "Any prior warnings, complaints, performance issues?" "Nope." That's when her expression changed. We sat down at the kitchen table and started going through what little documentation I had. The emails were still on my phone. Karen's responses looked even worse when read out loud. Vague, condescending, threatening without actually saying anything concrete. The kind of messages that feel intimidating until you slow down and realize they're empty. We replied. At first, we kept it polite. We asked for clarification about my termination, the reason, whether this was a misunderstanding. Karen responded with what I can only describe as peak Karen energy. Long emails that said very little, written in that passive-aggressive corporate tone where every sentence feels like it's scolding you. She insisted that my behavior was unprofessional. She implied that my request showed a lack of commitment. She hinted that I had put the company in a difficult position. Still no actual reason. Still no legal justification. That's when I decided to look up the law. I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me sooner. Probably because most people are conditioned to believe that if your boss fires you, that's just it. But the more I read, the more alarm bells started going off. In my country, immediate dismissal is very clearly defined. It's not vague, it's not flexible, it's basically reserved for serious misconduct. Things like theft, fraud, violence, refusal to work, being unable to perform your job. I checked the list 3 times. I'd done none of those things. I showed up, I worked, I didn't steal, I didn't refuse tasks, I didn't break rules. I asked politely and in advance for a single day off. That's when it clicked. They didn't just fire me, they fired me illegally. This is the moment the paradigm shifts. You stop seeing yourself as a bad employee and start seeing them as bad employers. The law isn't an abstract concept, it's the concrete floor their inflated authority was standing over. You just found the trap door. Once that realization set in, my frustration turned into something else entirely. Calm determination. The kind of focus you get when you realize the other side is already lost, they just don't know it yet. We sent another email, this time more direct. We referenced labor law. We asked again for a written justification. Karen's response dropped the mask completely. She accused me of being entitled. She implied I should be grateful to have worked there at all. She suggested I was too young to understand professional responsibility. At one point, she actually wrote something along the lines of, "Actions have consequences," which felt especially ironic considering what was about to happen next. That was when we stopped emailing. Instead, I booked a meeting with an attorney. Walking into that office was intimidating. I'd never sued anyone before. I half expected the lawyer to tell me I was wasting my time. Instead, he listened carefully, asked precise questions, and read the emails in silence. When he finished, he leaned back and smiled. "This is very clean," he said. Those were his exact words. He explained that not only did I have a case, but it was one of the most straightforward ones he'd seen recently. No warnings, no documentation, no valid reason. And on top of that, Karen's emails actively worked against them by demonstrating intent and attitude. We filed. The process wasn't fast. There were forms, deadlines, and more emails now sent through legal channels. Karen's tone shifted once lawyers were involved. She became curt, defensive, suddenly very careful with her wording. We ended up in small claims court, which meant the stakes were high enough to matter, but not so high that the company could bury the issue in endless delays. The court date was set. I showed up in a suit with my attorney beside me. I'd barely slept the night before, but I was determined to look calm and professional. Karen showed up alone. No Dave, no son, no lawyer. She looked confident, smug even. I realized in that moment that she genuinely believed she was right. The hearing started normally. I explained the situation clearly and factually. No insults, no emotion, just dates, emails, and actions. Karen did the same, at first. Then the judge started asking questions, specific questions. Questions about procedure. Questions about documentation. Questions Karen did not have good answers for. That's when she cracked. Her voice rose. She interrupted. She accused me of being spoiled, lazy, ungrateful. She said things that weren't even relevant to the case. At one point, she actually rolled her eyes at the judge. You could feel the room change. That was the moment I knew I'd won. After Karen's little meltdown in the courtroom, everything moved very quickly. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't scold her dramatically. He didn't need to. He simply let her finish, stared at her for a few seconds longer than was comfortable, and then told her to stop speaking. That silence did more damage than any reprimand could have. He turned to my attorney and asked if we had anything further to add. My lawyer stood calmly, summarized the timeline, referenced the relevant labor statutes again, and finished with something along the lines of, "There is no lawful basis for immediate termination in this case." That was it. Karen tried to interrupt again. The judge shut her down immediately, this time not politely. He explained slowly, clearly, and very bluntly that asking for a day off is not misconduct, that poor attitude is not grounds for immediate dismissal, that employers are not allowed to invent their own rules because they feel disrespected. He emphasized that labor law exists specifically to prevent exactly this kind of behavior. He ruled in my favor on the spot. Karen's face went from red to pale in a matter of seconds. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then seemed to realize there was nothing left to say. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely unsure of herself. The judge informed her that Company N owed me 6 months of pay, plus interest, plus court costs. He also made a point of noting that I had pursued additional damages. The outcome could have been significantly worse for them. That part stuck with her. The courtroom wasn't about proving facts. They were undeniable. It was about revealing character. Her meltdown exposed the fragile ego behind the administrative bluster. The judge didn't defeat her arguments. He simply refused to live in her fantasy world where vibes are law. The hearing ended. We packed up. Karen left without looking at me. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong, but not in a bad way. About a month later, I received the verdict in writing. Seeing it printed, stamped, and signed felt surreal. This wasn't just a technical win, it was official, undeniable. They had fired me illegally, and they had to pay for it. Another few weeks passed, and then one morning I checked my bank account and just stared at the screen. The money was there. 6 months' pay, all at once. I don't think I'd ever experienced that particular mix of emotions before. Relief, vindication, disbelief, and a quiet sense of I didn't let them get away with it. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't desperate anymore either, and the timing couldn't have been better. The Slayer concert was still happening. I bought the tickets without hesitation. No budgeting spreadsheets, no second guessing. Just clicked purchase and leaned back in my chair. For once, I didn't feel guilty spending money on something I wanted. The night of the concert, standing in the crowd, feeling the bass hit my chest, screaming lyrics with thousands of other people, it hit me how absurd the whole situation had been. A single day off request had triggered months of stress, legal battles, and emails, and yet it ended with me standing there, smiling, knowing I'd done the right thing by standing up for myself. It wasn't just about the money, it was about not letting someone like Karen decide my worth. I heard through the grapevine later that Company N didn't have the same family atmosphere anymore. Turnover increased, a few people quit not long after. Dave apparently stayed quiet through most of it, which didn't surprise me. He'd always been the quieter one, the one who let Karen do the dirty work. As for Karen, I never spoke to her again. I never needed to. I took some time off after that, real time, not checking emails time. I focused on my studies, on myself, and on remembering that employers are not authority figures in your life. They're just people bound by the same laws as everyone else. If there's one thing I took away from all this, it's this. Don't let someone convince you that asking for basic respect is unreasonable. And don't assume that just because someone sounds confident, they're right. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is also the most wrong. And sometimes standing your ground gets you 6 months' pay and the best concert of your life. The ultimate lesson is one of reclamation. They tried to punish you for wanting something, a concert. In doing so, they handed you the resources to fully enjoy it, plus a masterclass in your own rights. The victory wasn't just in court, it was in the visceral joy of the experience they failed to deny you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.